Something is seriously wrong here. And the deeper you look, the worse it gets. Millions in public money, questionable deals, and officials who seem to protect corruption instead of stopping it. How does this keep happening? And who is really benefiting? Stay with me, because in this breakdown we're exposing the facts many people don't want to talk about. Like the video, and watch until the end, because the final clip will explain why this situation is raising serious questions.
Ms. Baloy only became a director of the company on the 26th of June 2023. That was a week after the bid invitation had been advertised, and it was less than a month before the closing date for the bid. You see that?
Yes.
And that, I want to put to you, ought to be something of a red flag if one is adjudicating tenders. If one sees that the only director becomes a director after your bid advertisement date and very close to submission date, that should raise some suspicions. Would you accept that? You're nodding. There are more red flags here, because when she became a director, if we go down to page 127...
Your mic, Mr.
If we go down to 127, we know that as a director of this company, she applied in the name of Buena Vista Learning Academy, but at the time she became a director, the company was called Mokoko Grill. It seems to have been a Chesenyama company. That we see at page 127, and the very first item, there was a name change on the 11th of July, and in brackets underneath is the previous name, Mokoko Grill. So after the bid was invited, and less than 2 weeks before the deadline, Mokoko Grill became Buena Vista Learning Academy. I want to put to you that that was another red flag that might have been picked up if
Yes.
you accept that. Let's look at the bid price. We see that at 169. There it says 7 programs, and it says total bid price 66,500. But if we go to page 158, we see a spreadsheet that the municipality have provided to us of the payments to Buena Vista Learning Academy on this contract. And although they bid with a total bid price of 66,500, in the period from 23 July 2024 to 5 September 2025, they were paid 3,484,987. Do you know how that could have happened?
I want to understand that the total bid price, it means that you're going to tender for 6,600, for 66,000 for the whole tender. I want to have clarity on that, Chair. As I say, I'm not an expert on that. But on the spreadsheet, it will be the allocation of training.
When it says departmental, if we look at page 158, when it says departmental cost center description, projects, HOD's office, projects, management, HOD roads and stormwater, what does that reflect? Surely that reflects payments from particular departments.
It means it's the money allocated. The departments, they will ask for a particular training, and then we'll allocate that training for that department. And once they are done with the training, it will be paid from the CETA's grants. So where it says departments, it means training, it happened in those departments.
So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is that the city has access to CETA funds,
Yes.
or funds that it can use out of its skill development levy payments and the like, and it will allocate from those funds, or certain departments will have a claim on those funds for training, and so the money is ultimately paid for by the city, albeit what it results in is a credit on skills development levies, the funds that the city would otherwise pay to the CETA.
Yes, technically you can say that. Apologies, Chair, I'm still getting the page.
311.
Thank you.
It records under created date, which is when the CSD registration takes place, that CSD registration took place on 20 July 2023. So this company was registered with the CSD 4 days before it submitted.
Yes.
Were you instructed by Dr. Mashazi not to institute or to proceed with disciplinary hearing, a disciplinary process against Commissioner Mkhwanazi?
Chair, I want you to understand this. The instruction, it did not happen with HR. It happened with Dr. Mashazi, Advocate Kemi, and Chief
No, Mr. Kosheka, we don't have endless time. I'm asking you a straightforward question. Don't repeat what you've been telling us. You've been repeating since yesterday that Dr. Mashazi, Chief Mapieye, and Mr. Behari, they met and they agreed that they're not going to proceed with the disciplinary. So please don't repeat that. I've asked you a direct question, and I started off by explaining the basis on which I'm asking my question. Since yesterday, including a few seconds ago, you keep saying, if you don't follow instructions of your superior, I think you said you can even be terminated. You said something like that. And all the time you're referring to instructions from your superior, Dr. Mashazi, hence my question. And my question is simply this. Did you get an instruction, based on what you're saying, did you get an instruction from Dr. Mashazi not to institute or continue with disciplinary action against Commissioner Mkhwanazi? It's either a yes or no answer.
Chair, on the engagement of, I think, 22nd August, after the Big matter, because I think the question was different initially, that between the charge and whenever, why I didn't do anything.
Now I'm asking you a different question, Ms. Krasheka, please. Now I'm asking you a direct question. Or did you not get instructions from Dr. Mashazi not to discipline Commissioner Mkhwanazi?
On the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, of August, when we were called into a meeting, in the discussions that were taking place there, it became clear what was the appetite on this matter. Hence, when there was an instruction that let's change the disciplinary procedure. And I take full accountability, no more Xolani Ngceza taking accountability. I then took a forensic investigation process to find a way of protecting me without exposing myself.
Let me stop you there. You say in the meeting you've still not answered my question, but let me work with what you've said now. You say in that meeting it was clear what was the appetite. What was the appetite? According to you, as you saw it in this meeting, what did you see to be the appetite about this disciplinary process?
I would want to attest to what the Chief of Police has said, that it started to look that certain people are targeting Mr. Mkhwanazi.
What was the appetite, Mr. Shega? You were in the meeting, you formed a view there's a particular appetite, whatever you mean by that, about this matter. What was the appetite?
The appetite is the same as the legal opinion.
No.
Can I finish?
No, Mr. Sheka, don't do that. I'm asking you a question. It's a second question that I'm asking you that you're not answering. All to do with the instruction from Dr. Mashazi. That's what I'm asking you. You've now introduced the appetite. It became clear. That's your language, right? And you say that when you should have answered my question about whether or not you got an instruction, you choose to speak of an appetite. Now I'm asking you, what was the appetite that you descend out of that meeting to do with disciplining Commissioner Mkhwanazi?
Thank you, Commissioner. I am praying that Commissioner Balo, you're going to allow me to finish. One of the discussions or of the meetings, one of the key points in that meeting was there was a discussion that took place, and there was an agreement that this whole thing is going to be stopped. I won't have the exact words. This whole issue of Mr. Mkhwanazi is going to be stopped. Why is it still pursuing? And I got shocked because, as I say, majority of the times I'm not involved in these things. And I've been pressed, I've said that even on labor relations, cost management, it's been the issues I've been dealing with. You are not managing, I've said this yesterday, that Linda, you're not managing your department. Things are happening beyond you. Discussions have taken place, we're going to stop this matter. When I'm talking about the complexity, and I'm going to end here.
Just before you go to the complexity, so the appetite was not to pursue the disciplinary process. That's what the appetite was. Please, yes or no?
Yes, Chair,
Yes,
it's
let's stop
confirming
there.
the 20...
Can we stop there?
the
You said
22
yes.
letter,
That's
okay.
what the appetite was. And was this the appetite of Dr. Mashazi?
That's what I'm saying. She was chairing the meeting.
It could have been the appetite of anybody who was in attendance. Was this the appetite of Dr. Mashazi?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, you never got an instruction. I think we all understand what you mean or it means when someone says, I got an instruction. Just like you got an instruction that you told us earlier yesterday, that you got an instruction about the suspension, for example. So should I take it from your answer, or should we take it from your response to my direct question? And you now speaking about an appetite in a meeting, that it means you never got an instruction from Dr. Mashazi not to discipline Dr. Mkwanazi, Commissioner Mkwanazi, whether in writing, whether in a meeting. Dr. Mashazi never instructed you not to discipline Commissioner Mkwanazi.
I'm going to respond to it, Chair, but can it just not end to a yes or a no? I need to give a context.
Yeah, I'm hoping that at the end of it you will have a yes or no, so you can give the context.
Thank you
it's
so
fine.
much. The discussion says, I had a discussion with the other colleagues. We agreed this matter must stop. Why is it continuing? You are not taking ownership of your department, Linda. We have agreed we must stop this matter, and why is it still continuing? Why it hasn't stopped? You cannot control your people in your division. It might not have directly said you stop, but it's asking me why you haven't stopped. If it doesn't stop, you're going to account. So I don't know if that means an instruction, but it's a very clear tone that says if you don't stop, you're going to account. You are also not managing. The labor relation costs are increasing. The labor cases are increasing.
Yes.
You must stop.
You see, it would be bad if we were to say in our report, Dr. Mashazi instructed Ms. Kasheka not to discipline Commissioner Mkwanazi, if in fact that's not what you say to us. That's why it's important to understand what are you saying. But I think you've answered as best as you can, or as best as you are prepared to answer, and I'm happy to leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. As I say, it was maybe it is an instruction. It was an instruction, let me not say that. But the way it was said, it wasn't just say, stop this disciplinary hearing. It says, why are you not controlling your department? Why is this matter still continuing, whereas I've stopped it? You're not managing your department. Hence, I'm saying it becomes complex. It wasn't just, it says stop this hearing, but also manage your department. So I wanted to give that context that there was clear that you must stop this hearing.
Mrs. Kasheka, as observed by Commissioner Baloyi, from yesterday to today, you have repeatedly said that the instructions of Dr. Mashazi or the accounting officer must be complied with. Can that be said appropriately by an HR practitioner, especially one at the highest level like you?
Chair, let me also remind you what I said yesterday. When discussions are taking place and instructions are made, we deliberate. And I've said yesterday, majority of the time, I find that she already has a legal position. I'm not sure where she gets to be capacitated. We debate on issues. Ultimately, once I could see that she has her point and it's taken, you can't move. I'm going to make a sensitive example just to give another context. When the matter of a chief came, for instance, saying let's settle it, I still went. And I said, from the humanitarian point of view, he's left with less than a year. I spoke to the lady who was involved in the matter. She agreed. I go to Dr. Mashazi and I said, let's settle this matter. She agrees. 30 minutes, 40 minutes later, I'm called again. We are not circling because she now has a different view from the legal side of things. I think that's the complexity I'm trying to explain, that from HR side of things, we'll do things in a particular manner. I will advise in a particular manner. And I've said yesterday consistently that there's HR who will advise. After HR, there's legal. And ultimately, once legal has made a decision for that institution, it's binding and it's got its own risk, and one person can account its legal and the accounting officer. And I'm appealing to the Commission that you hear where I'm coming from. I do advise. I think if you haven't seen my character today, I don't know. I'm a person who will be persistent, who will be advising. But ultimately, when a person has made a decision and is your boss, there's legal you can do. An example that would have happened, maybe it would have been better than coming here. Let's say my report says, investigate why the DC of Mr. Mkhwanazi has not happened, but we had a meeting. I won't be here. Maybe it would have been a blessing. I can guarantee you.
In that context, Brigadier Mkhwanazi applies for promotion. And can you take us through this document? Because it's not clear to me. I see you were on the panel. I see Chief Mapie was on the panel. There's a Ms. Zanele Katembo, who also appears to have been on the panel. Who is she?
Your mic, please.
Zanele Katembo was an HOD for Shreke, that it's Sports, Recreation, Arts and Culture. That was her role, I think, at that time. Thank you, Chair.
And Advocate Behari was also on the panel, although it seems that he wasn't present at the interview. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there was someone from HR Secretariat, but she didn't play a role in the interviews. The upshot of the interview was that a recommendation was made that Brigadier Mkhwanazi should be promoted to the post of Deputy Chief of Police Specialized Services. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, I simply want to ask you, in a context where charges of the nature that had been laid against Brigadier Mkhwanazi were still out there, hadn't been resolved, why did you see fit to recommend him for promotion to a more senior position?
As I say, by that time, Chair, it was clear that the process of the DC is not going to continue. And obviously the employee has been exonerated, given a letter that the process is not continuing.
Sorry,
And
can I interrupt there? The employee was never exonerated. No one ever said you have been found not guilty of any of these charges. At best, what happened was that the process of proceeding with the charges was frustrated through a series of, well, at best, gross inefficiencies, at worst, deliberate sabotage. There was no exoneration.
let me rephrase. Remember, this is an employee who's sitting with a letter that says we're no longer continuing with the investigation process and whatever.
But
And
sorry,
he
can I
applied
take
for
you
the
up? Sorry, can I come in there as well? Because that letter says we're no longer we're no longer continuing with the investigation process. But in fact, the investigation process had been finished by then. There was the investigation was over. What was now needing to happen was a disciplinary hearing. There's no need for further investigation, just for a hearing to take place.
Yes, he was also told, go back to your substantive post, continue with your work. So firstly, for the employee to apply the position, the understanding is that this DC is not continuing. And at that time, there was no disciplinary hearing that is continuing. As I say, based on my initial testimony, my earlier testimony, and the legal opinion, if it was then done by then, I can't recall. So we could not prejudice the employee in this particular time. Hence, he applied as well like everybody else.
Sorry, which legal opinion said that you could not proceed in, I think it was October 2023?
As I say, if I recall events, there was a legal opinion, I think we discussed it, that said there are no fraud issues against him. Maybe it's the way I'm putting it. And so at this point in time, the mere fact that we continue, there was no disciplinary process that is continuing. Chair, thank you.
You see, whether or not there was a disciplinary process pending is a separate question from whether this applicant is a fit and proper person for this promotion. And I struggle with the notion that someone against whom allegations of that nature have been leveled and have reached the point of proceeding to a hearing only for a charge sheet not to be served is fit and proper to be a deputy head of police. What's your response to that?
I hear the inference on your side. On my side, in terms of the procedure, there was no DC that was happening, and therefore there will be no reason to say we are not shortlisting you because you are not meeting, there's a pending DC, because clearly there was no pending DC.
There was a directive by IPID that he should be charged, and that directive is binding on the city of Ekurhuleni.
I didn't see it that time.
But you say the opinion exonerated him. That opinion is the opinion that said IPID must be disregarded. Which other opinion are you referring to?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, so that's why I'm saying there was a directive by IPID, and that opinion was responding to the directive. So you cannot say there was nothing pending. There was a pending directive by IPID. The fact that Ekurhuleni did not comply with it does not mean there was no pending directive by IPID that Mkwanazi should be disciplined.
I hear you, Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Shega, the question still, Mr. Chaskalson's question still stands, that the disciplinary process is not complete, it's not shut down, not by the letter from Chief Mapie, because he speaks, as Mr. Chaskalson says, he speaks of an investigation. You then recommend the candidate, and the question is, how in your judgment is it appropriate for you in particular to recommend such a candidate for a promotion to Deputy Chief of Police on such serious charges?
Chair, thank you. I'm still saying that at that point in time, halted or suspended the DC, it would have been a prejudice not to give him an opportunity to complete with other candidates.
The issue is not why did you interview him, because competing with other candidates is at interview stage. I mean, even the worst of, we've got a list, so I need to explain what I'm going to say next. We know from your vetting results, that some people were found to be rapists, but they're in the employ of the city. So even that person who is found to be a rapist, when they apply, you would have looked at, do they meet the requirements for shortlisting, right? And then you would shortlist them. And that's a fair for them to come and justify to the panel why they are suitable for appointment. So we are past that. You've shortlisted. You, head of HR, are aware that there are these unresolved charges, serious charges against this individual. How do you make the judgment that it's appropriate to recommend him for appointment?
My judgment, Chair, was based on procedurally, I thought it's fair to give, if there's a halt or stopped DC, you give a candidate an opportunity like everybody else. If indeed at some point you are found guilty, you'll always be dismissed.
No, he was never going to be found guilty because the city manager has given you an instruction. Remember that earlier conversation? Yes. So you say the city manager gave an instruction, and that's why that explains your inactivity about further disciplinary steps. So that has ended, but he's never been exonerated of these serious charges. He's never been. Here's the HOD of Human Resources, the what do you call it? The one who gives direction, supposedly, on matters of discipline and how people should behave and what is tolerable behavior. You recommend his promotion. That is a problem. Do you accept that?
I said, Chair, that it is an oversight. We could have done better. I advise on the other side that procedural. In fact, it's just that the reason I don't want even to talk to it because it was not recorded. I said after the shortlisting, because no employee at EMPD who met the requirements, it was only these two. I then said, let's not proceed, let's re-advertise. And because we already didn't extend the contract of Mr. Mzolo, the chief pushed that we do interviews. And I think when you go for interviews, you might anticipate a particular outcome if you want to, but interviews will always surprise you. And then once it's recorded and we made this recommendation, it's difficult to go back. If we could have restarted the process, maybe we won't be here. But I'm taking full accountability that I should have stopped the process when I said, let's stop the process.
Well, we're at a point where you did not stop the process.
Yes.
You interview, you know the problem about this candidate, you recommend, you do a positive act. You're saying he's suitable for the position. That's what this conversation is about. So
yes.
It's not oversight at all. It doesn't fall in the category of oversight. It would be oversight if you didn't know that there were these accusations against him or you were mistaken about something, right? Here, this is unresolved. There's serious allegations against him. And we do have evidence here where EMPD conducted an investigation. And you would have seen that, as Commissioner Khumalo says, that IPID has directed that he should be disciplined. You have testified that, well, it was frustrated / there were instructions. Now we come to you personally. Why do you recommend such a defective candidate whose defects are known to you, are recorded in a charge sheet? How do you, head of HR,
The process
say, oh, he can be promoted, he's suitable for the position?
The process was halt, and the employee competed with other candidates. And we shortlisted, we interviewed, and he did well on that interview. I agree that in terms of the character, we could have done better. And I'm taking full accountability that we could have done better. But the process is on its own. It's not even a process that is made only by myself. It's a process that is made by the panel. As much as I've advised, and I'm taking full responsibility, I'm not going to say I'm instructed in this one. If there were instructions, they were not given to me. The only thing that we did was to score, and the person who scored him higher, and therefore was recommended.
So is it fair to say that you saw nothing wrong? The short answer, at that time, now with hindsight, maybe you say, well, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe that's what you're saying. I don't know if that's what you're saying, but I'm asking, in the moment when you recommend that he's suitable for promotion, you did not see any problem with that? You considered him...
It was a red flag, and as I say, I think what was left is how you debate it. Remember, at the time, as much as I can recall, there was not even a criminal record against him, but there were pending allegations against him. And unfortunately, we didn't get to test them to the end.
No, you may not have tested them as a panel, and the conversation really... We've had the same conversation with Chief Mapie and raised our concerns about his own conduct with this interview, rather with recommending Commissioner Mkhwanazi. It's exactly the same concern with you, and this is not a panel concern, it's a concern about you individually, you as a person who knows the problems that have been raised about this candidate, who knows that there's either an aborted disciplinary process or suspended disciplinary process, whatever language you choose for it. He's never been exonerated, and you have to accept that. I think you've accepted that yes. He was never exonerated of these serious charges. You sit there and you determine he's fit and proper, notwithstanding he's fit and proper to be promoted to the position. That's a difficulty I have with you about either it's a sign of poor judgment on your part, at least from where I'm sitting, Or it's something more serious, that you were prepared, because it's Mkhwanazi, you were prepared to overlook the problems, the red flags, to use your language, about him. You overlooked them because it is Mkhwanazi, or you simply failed in your job?